Anna was born in a small town. She didn't know her father and mother. Lucia never said anything about him, but she was always sad if her daughter asked about him. Lucia loved her daughter and tried to do everything to make her happy. The only thing that overshadowed their lives was the behavior of the mother's stepsister, Vicky. The always drunk woman often came to them and was constantly begging for money. If she got it, she left until the next time. But if Lucia refused her, she made a terrible row. Anna saw how ashamed her mother was of such a drunken sister. Lucia worked at the post office during the day, and in the evening she tutored her daughter, helping her with her studies and playing board games. Mr. Michael, a neighbor, often visited them. The girl was always happy when the elderly man came to visit, and after he presented her with a puppy, she was over the moon. Now, Anna spent all her free time with the tiny puppy who became her best friend. Time passed by. Anna turned into a lovely girl when she was 17. Her mother got very sick. Doctors diagnosed cancer, and 3 months later, her mother was gone. After her mother's funeral, she began to understand what the terrible word orphan meant. Of course, she had her dog Luna and Mr. Michael with her, but the feeling of loneliness didn't leave her. During this difficult period, due to legal delays, her Aunt Vicky was able to assert her rights to the part of the house and came to live with Anna. The girl had nothing to say to her, and all she was left to do was put up with the daily drunkenness of her aunt and her lover in her dead mother's house. This went on for several months. The girl's life became a nightmare. The house became in terrible condition because her aunt and her drinking buddies were turning the house into a dump more quickly than she cleaned. Anna thought more and more about moving to the city and looking for an apartment and a job. At first, the girl had plans to go to college, but she had nothing to live on and she was determined to get a job in her study remotely. One day, Anna came into the city for another job interview. She was crossing the road on the crosswalk when suddenly she heard the screeching of the brakes next to her. A car rushing straight at her, barely had time to sway and bypass her. But Anna got frightened and losing her balance stumbled and fell, painfully hitting her back on the low metal railing. She didn't remember anything else. The girl woke up in the hospital. The attending physician gave a disappointing diagnosis: partial damage to the spine and temporary paralysis of the lower extremities. Anna cried, realizing that she was very unlucky. She was an orphan, and now she was bedridden as well. The doctor told her that she should not despair. There was hope that her young body would be able to cope with the disease. Several times a strange man came to the hospital, and he turned out to be the husband of the woman who put Anna in such a miserable condition. He offered money, but Anna didn't take it either out of pride or resentment. Or maybe she thought it was her own fault because the car didn't even hit her, but only frightened her and she herself had a bad fall. The man left and never came back, but the doctor reassured the girl that someone had anonymously paid the full sum necessary for her treatment and rehabilitation. Time passed. Anna didn't want to live at all, but she was not ready to die either for the sake of her mother's memory. She decided to fight and tried to get back on her feet. One day, Mr. Michael came to visit her. The girl was very happy because he was the dearest person in the world to her. The old man brought a wheelchair with him to pick up the girl from the hospital when they approached the car. Anna almost jumped out of the wheelchair with joy when she saw her faithful Luna in the back seat of the car. But although she was happy about Mr. Michael and the dog, she realized that she was in for impenetrable darkness and life with a drunken aunt. As if reading her thoughts, Mr. Michael said he would take her and Luna to his home. The old man gave Anna a whole room and made everything comfortable for her. She looked at him with gratitude, realizing what a kind-hearted man he was. The monotonous days dragged on. Anna underwent rehabilitation. Mr. Michael made sure Anna constantly practiced special exercises on her own. After a while, the girl's toes came alive. She felt them after the latest procedure and cried with happiness. Anna began to exercise with twice as much strength and little by little. The young boy began to take over the heavy injury. After a few months, she gradually began to walk, leaning on 2 sticks. One day, the drunken Aunt Vicky came to them and said she wanted to sell the house and needed Anna's signature. The girl refused and warned them that tomorrow she would be moving in to live in her own house, where she had grown up. The aunt grudgingly snorted and staggered away. The next day, Anna came up in with her stuff and rang the doorbell. The door opened and the aunt's drunken cohabitant stared at her. The girl timidly asked to be left in her own house. Then Vicky came out and the 2 of them blocked her away. The aunt hissed that Anna should not come here anymore, and if she complained to the police, they would burn her, Mr. Michael, and his house. Anna was desperate. Drunk people are capable of anything, so she had no choice but to go back to Mr. Michael's house. The old man told her that after his death, his house would be left to her and let these snakes live as they wanted. And one day she'd be the heir of 2 houses and be considered a rich bride. Gradually, Anna managed to rehabilitate her legs. Only a slight limp remained, but the girl was so happy with the results obtained. She began to spring up the subject of moving to the city, but Mr. Michael, of course, didn't want her to leave, though he understood that she needed to arrange her life. On the scheduled day, Anna packed her things and got on the bus. Suddenly, the dog jumped into the bus after her, and no matter how hard the driver tried to get him off, he wouldn't budge. The driver grunted, but Anna looked at the man pleadingly and he relented. The bus moved and Luna contentedly collapsed at the girl's feet and dozed off in the city. Anna got a job at a copy center and rented a tiny apartment. On her luck, the landlord let her dog live with her. Luna was a very well-mannered dog and calmly waited for Anna from work. And in the evening, the girl spent long walks with him in a remote park in the city park. One evening, when returning home, a frightened scream was heard nearby. Anna saw an elderly woman looking dazedly at the road. A girl of about 5 was riding her bicycle along the roadway, not noticing the rushing truck. Anna rushed towards her. Luna followed. The distance was rapidly closing, but the girl knew she would not make it in time. The truck was getting closer and, in the dim evening light, the driver failed to notice the little girl who was rolling right under the wheels. And just when something irreparable was about to happen, Luna jumped right in front of the truck and pawed the little girl in the back. She lost her balance and flipped over on the asphalt, falling silent on the other side of the road. Then she cried, but more from surprise than pain. The truck drove by an elderly woman, white as a sheet, ran up holding the girl close, sobbed with happiness. Luna was jumping happily next to her, sure that he was taking part in some fascinating game. Mrs. Tom, as the old woman's name was stammered with excitement, busily thanking Anna for the fact that her dog had saved her granddaughter Wendy's life. Then Mrs. Tom and Anna sat on a bench in the park while the girl played with the dog. The old woman non-stop talked about her life, about what a good son she had and a worthless daughter-in-law who did not love her husband and daughter at all. An hour later, an expensive car drove up, out of which a rather worried girl's father jumped out. Mrs. Tom called him right after what happened and he canceled all business to come get them. The man immediately ran up to Wendy and hugged his daughter tightly, and the old woman told him how the young woman and the dog had saved their Wendy. The man looked closely at Anna and they immediately recognized each other. Mrs. Tom, noticing their confusion, asked if they knew each other. Anna, lowering her eyes, said that he was the husband of the woman who was the reason she could not walk for so long. An awkward pause hung and Anna abruptly said goodbye and almost ran home with Luna. A couple of days later, the girl was walking out of the house and suddenly saw a familiar black car. The driver's door opened and the rescued girl's father got out of that. He said hello and offered to have a cup of tea at the cafe. Then he opened the trunk and pulled out a huge bag of dog food. Anna laughed. What a great reward waiting for Luna. Alan smiled back, and from the outside, they seemed like the happiest couple enjoying each other's company. They walked around the city for a long time and then drank coffee in the cafe. And in the evening, they walked Luna in the park until late at night. Reasoned Alan, "My wife caused your injury and it was the last straw for me." After a while, Alan and Anna were married. His ex-wife left him for another man after the divorce and went abroad, leaving his daughter with him. One day, the family decided to go to Anna's homeland. They loaded their things into the car and took Wendy and Luna with them. Upon arriving in the car, the girl was very upset because instead of her native home were ashes, Mr. Michael told her that her aunt and her partner got drunk and started a fire. Now they'd moved into their old house with a rotten roof and mold on the walls. Mr. Michael only wondered how the fate of his named granddaughter had changed, and he was very happy for her. 1 year later, the little town was decorated with a new neat house with a garden and a low fence. One day, the whole family was enjoying a sunny day in the yard, while Sarah was showing Mr. Michael grass and flowers and Alan hugged Anna, who already had a very noticeably rounded belly and admired his entire idol.